we must recognize that creation is the purview of the feminine, creation and destruction. The divine masculine can have the impulse to create. It can have vision, inspiration, imagination, but even that it can't have without the divine feminine, because the space in which what the masculine imagines exists in the body of the divine feminine, just on a more subtle level. Because psyche is feminine, mind is feminine. The entire universe, the body of the universe is feminine. The masculine cannot create anything without the feminine, because all that it creates and everything that exists does so by virtue of the divine feminine. And this is why traditionally women were put on pedestals and they were adored and they were worshipped. And certainly the divine feminine was worshipped in all mystery schools and all ancient cultures. The divine feminine was worshipped in Catholicism, and then later the Christian sects, which branched off of Catholicism, relegated the divine mother, the mother of God, the mother of Christ. But strangely, if you go to South America and other Latin countries, the cults of worship to Mary are everywhere. And their appreciation and reverence for Mary, the mother of God, the mother of Jesus, runs very deep. Their love and reverence and devotion and prayer to Mary. There's a long tradition in Latin countries, more so than others. And it may be because the Latin countries are directly linked to Rome, and that in the Roman pantheon, the divine feminine took on a very important role, just as she did in the Greeks. Because Athena, there was an incredible statue of Athena in the Temple of Apollo, the Oracle of Delphi. There was a long tradition of women taking on powerful and potent roles in spirituality, precisely because of their connection to the divine feminine. And specifically, you know it through the superior heart center. The logic in love is not the logic of the mind. It is the wisdom of Sophia. In other words, it is the logic of the Logos. It is the word. Beauty is truth, and truth, beauty. That is why women are associated with beauty. Yes, Michelangelo carved David, and it is obviously an expression of beauty, and there is beauty in the masculine form, but it doesn't begin to hold a candle to the beauty in the feminine form. The masculine contribution to creation is a spark, a seed, and the impulse. The masculine force, it's like, again, the ignition which starts the car. The masculine impulse is to create with and through the feminine. Without the feminine, the masculine cannot create. Why are men, generally speaking, so interested in machines, cars, or technology, or engineering, or airplanes? Because mechanical nature is feminine, and working with nature to craft and sculpt and take apart and put back together in new and novel ways to meet the needs of humanity, for example. This is the masculine impulse, to work with nature and work with the feminine in order to create, to express through an act of creation. And why, for example, you have men who are plumbers and men who are mechanics. And all along the line, these men who work with their hands, and we call them skilled laborers or journeymen or craftspeople or tradesmen, these are all essential to civilization, to a modern civilization, but even ancient civilizations. You had to have the blacksmith, you had to have the baker, you had to have these roles filled. And many of the men who filled them were following their bliss. Like today, many chefs, because they love what they do. And when you strip away all the details and strip away all the differences, they're all really doing the same thing. They're serving Mother Nature, and they're working with and through Mother Nature in some capacity, and they're pouring their love into their work, which is their bliss, their passion. And the result of that is that they love what they do, and you can feel that love, you can see that love in the fruits of their labor. And why is it fruits of their labor? Because a fruit is the result of the union of masculine and feminine in the flower. The whole reason why the flower exists and it blooms is to attract what it longs to unite with. And then the flower dies, and what appears in its place is a fruit. So the masculine, the divine masculine, seeks to unite with the feminine, with that flower. And through their effort and through their impulse to work with that flower, to see the fruits of their labors realized. This is what it means to bear fruit, that our efforts bear fruit. That effort, that impulse, that energy, that action, that cause in and through the feminine, we see an effect. And we long for that effect to bear fruit, to have an expression, a positive, productive, meaningful expression in and through the feminine, which we can look at and say, that we did good work. None of what we just described is possible without love. Love is what makes all of this possible. If there were no love, there's no impulse. And if there's no impulse, there's no union. And without union, there's no fruit. Without the loving union of the masculine and feminine, there can be no fruit. There is no bearing of fruit. Love is the force, the magical, ephemeral phenomenon that sets the entire universe in motion, including the Aum of life, and especially the law of three, the creative law of the universe. And so the masculine force applies itself to the feminine. We have talked about Tantra in the past, but here especially, we come to the foundation of Tantra itself. Love is synonymous with what we are about to describe. Most people only think of Tantra in the context of sexual activity between a man and a woman, or male and female of many different species and many, many different plants. We all know that there is an active force and expressive force, which is provided by the male, the masculine force. And that universally, in every case, the feminine is the receptive force. The female receives the seed that the male expresses, that the male gives. Sophia is wisdom, but wisdom is born of experience. Now, how does one create an experience, if not an expression through the medium of consciousness, which is feminine? There is an expression through that medium, and that expression then unites with the reception, the receptive aspect of consciousness. And when some expression is received in consciousness, you have an experience. You experience an impression. The expression makes an impression in the field of consciousness. That's masculine entering the feminine, and the union of masculine and feminine creates the experience, the expression. So sexual union and experience on a fundamental level, it's Tantra. This is the true meaning of Tantra, the law of three, the creative force, and that wisdom, Sophia, requires the activity of the masculine upon the feminine.